Who's in? Who's watching? Man, seriously, that's it? Like, none of you. Like, who's watching, like, 51% or more, like, you're watching for the halftime show / commercials? Any of those people? Yeah. Who's watching for football? Anyone? It's like 3 people. Okay, cool.
The Seahawks aren't playing.
I know the Seahawks aren't playing. There's a lot of people who aren't playing. Actually. Cool. Well, okay. Well, then I am with you in that. I was like, what can we go do? Like, go shopping at Costco is another thing to do, like when everyone's watching the Super Bowl. But now it sounds like no one's watching the Super Bowl, so I don't know if, anyway. Okay. Well, I hope it's a great afternoon, however you spend it. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in a churchy family, like a very churchy family, like generations of churchiness. My dad's dad, and my dad's 2 brothers, they were all Lutheran pastors. And parenthetically, well, I should say 2. Then my dad, when I was in 4th grade, guess what he became? A pastor. So they're like all pastors. And so parenthetically, my comment is, like, I grew up like very aware that being a pastor was a calling, and I felt very not called to that. Thank you very much. And then God has a great sense of humor, so here I am. Right, but then so it's like all these pastors. But then my mom's side of the family, so my mom's dad was a church organist and a Lutheran parochial school teacher, music teacher. And then my mom's mom, so my grandmother's father and her grandfather, they were also organists and composers. Like, they have music in the Lutheran hymnal as well. So it's like my mom's side of the family, all these organists, and guess what my mom is? An organist and piano teacher. And so all this like churchy musicness happening on this side, which is hilarious given who I married, because he's just the rock and roll version of a church organist, right? So it's just so funny to me. So, and I do want to say that not to worry, because I've been in plenty of therapy to work all this through, because I mean, come on, right? Like, what's going on? So that's just a bit about like where I come from. And there are so many great gifts and blessings that I received to have grown up in a family with such involvement in churches, and just to grow up in community in that way was awesome. But one of the things that has been interesting to me is reflect back on my experience of growing up. And I did not really grow up consciously aware of and in touch with the idea that God can be heard. I didn't have an awareness of that God can be experienced, even interacted with, even though we were very plugged in at church, right? Like we would say our prayers before mealtime, before bedtime. My parents loved Jesus. And yet there was no real awareness that God was really like actively present in our lives. And I just wonder, how did you grow up? With no awareness of God, with some awareness of God, with God being very present? Was it similar to my experience? Was it very different? Is it different for you now than it was when you were a kid? Because it's quite different for me now than it was. One of the great joys and awakenings of my adult life has been growing into this place that, through friendships that I've had with people and with other pastors and being in different church contexts, I've just grown to this awareness that there is this God, our God, who is always with me, who is always with everyone, and who can be experienced in countless ways. God is really with us. And our journey then is to awaken to this presence of God within us, that inner blueprint. That's the language we've been using these last few weeks, this image of God within us, and awaken to what we're hearing and what we see and what we resonate with and what we're being moved by in our everyday lives, because God is there, right? In the words that we're speaking, in the music that we hear, in our conversations, in the books that we read, even in the silence that we have. God is there every day. And God is actively then relating with us. And if anything, then I think the spiritual life, our orientation to God, can be described as an invitation to open up and pay attention to what is being spoken around us. So I bring this all up because hearing God is a core practice for us here at Salt House. Hearing God is a core practice for us here at Salt House. We've been spending January up through next week just exploring and celebrating some of the core practices that we hold here as a community And this is one of them. And part of how we practice listening together and making room to hear God is that we hold two questions as just central to our practice of life together. And really, they're the two questions that are central to this life of following Jesus. What are our two questions? God, what are you saying to me? What is God saying to me? And what am I going to do about it? God, what are you saying? What am I going to do about it? So that first question, we could talk for like a whole year about what that question is. What does it mean? What do you mean God is talking? How do I hear God? How do I know it's God and not something else that I'm hearing? So we ask this first question. We ask it of each other here as our invitation to one another to pay attention, right? To stop and look around at what's happening and reflect on what God is saying in the midst of everything that's happening in our lives. And that second question, okay, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do based on what I'm hearing? Oh man, not only is it about listening and paying attention, that's hard enough to distill down what God is saying, but we're actually going to do something about it. We're going to actually be changed, like God worked change in us, whether that's changing the way we think or the way we see something or changing habits or behaviors, like we're going to move into a response and let God work that change through what we've been hearing. So these are the questions that we ask. And we are a community that listens. We hear God because we believe God is still speaking. And we want to pay attention because this life of Jesus sure has something to offer us, even now. So in addition to our two questions, or maybe even how we actually practice these two questions, we look at how we can pay attention together here at Salt House, which we try to do even in how we structure our time in worship, right? We want to experience that together, including making space to listen through a practice that we come back to every couple of weeks or so. We come back to the practice of Lectio Divina, which we will do today. So for those who are new to it, I always like to just explain what it is and help us all kind of continue to know what it is too. So Lectio Divina, it's Latin for holy word or divine reading. That's what it means. And it's a practice that's been around for a long time, since the 3rd century. I love participating in practice that's been around for like 1,500 years. It was formalized in the 12th century. There's kind of 4 movements to it, and it just involves rereading a section of the Bible, listening for a word or a phrase that gets our attention, then holding that word or phrase and prayerfully asking God, what are the connections here? What's happening in my life? Why is this coming up right now? And seeing what God says to us in that. So reading and listening to the Bible in this way, it affirms how we believe that Scripture is not a static, one-dimensional, it's all been said, there it is, kind of text, but it's still alive and kicking at us today. We're also in this movement right now becoming officially a Lutheran congregation in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. We already are affiliated with our parent congregation, but we're becoming this independent church. And Lutherans often they use this phrase, living word, to describe what the Bible is. And Martin Luther compares the Bible to the manger that held Christ. Just saying, the manger and the Bible were both made by human hands, but both hold God. And I love that. So we're affirming today how God can be heard and experienced in this living, breathing, ancient book that we call the Bible. That God is here in the text, in this present moment. And even when we read passages that are familiar to us, that we've read before, we're going to hear it in a different way because we are always growing and changing and in a different place too. We'll hear it and experience it differently, which is why we keep coming back and listening to what God is saying now. And I do want to name too that as we do this, you may find that Lectio is just not your jam. You're like, that's not my thing. And that is okay too. Thank you for hanging in as we still experience this together. So our reading for today, Sunday. So we're looking at the book of Romans. So this is the Apostle Paul writing to new Jesus followers who are in the church in the city of Rome. If you're listening or watching online, we're turning to Romans 8:22-28. We're looking at the message version, so we'll hear it a little bit differently, which is always fun to try. So we're going to practice this core practice of hearing God together now, all right? So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Shake it out. Roll your shoulders back. Become connected with your breath. Get comfortable. So the first step in Lectio is reading. We're just going to read the text. So I invite you to stay connected and in your body, to wiggle your toes, feel your feet. be present here in this space. So just listen to this. Our first time through is to be attentive with no agenda. You'll probably recognize the text, maybe with different language, and it's not too long, but it's not short, so hang in for all of it. But I invite you to listen with your eyes closed, if that's comfortable, for a word, just to hear all the words, actually, as we hear it this first time. So Romans 8:22 through 28. All around us, we observe a pregnant creation. The difficult times of pain throughout the world are simply birth pangs. But it's not only around us, it's within us. The Spirit of God is arousing us within. We're also feeling the birth pangs. These sterile and barren bodies of ours are yearning for full deliverance. That is why waiting does not diminish us any more than waiting diminishes a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting. We, of course, don't see what is enlarging us, but the longer we wait, the larger we become, and the more joyful our expectancy. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. God does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. God knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. So now this next time through, we listen for a word or a phrase that touches our heart, that gets our attention. That's what we listen for, just something that shimmers for us. I invite you, if you're a more visual person, to pull out that bulletin insert. If you got the bulletin when you walked in, on the back side is this text if you want to see it. Otherwise, if you're comfortable just listening, I invite you to do that. So again, we're just listening for one word, one phrase. Don't expect it like lightning to strike, though it might, but just something that shimmers for you or that you feel curious or confused or stirred by as we read. And then we'll have a short silence. And as you settle in on a word or phrase, if it happens this time during that silence, just kind of repeat that word or phrase, recite it to yourself after it's done. All around us, we observe a pregnant creation. The difficult times of pain throughout the world are simply birth pangs. But it's not only around us, it's within us. The Spirit of God is arousing us within. We're also feeling the birth pangs. These sterile and barren bodies of ours are yearning for full deliverance. That is why waiting does not diminish us, any more than waiting diminishes a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting. We, of course, don't see what is enlarging us, but the longer we wait, the larger we become, and the more joyful our expectancy. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. God does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. God knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. Friends, if you're willing, I invite you to just share out loud that word or phrase that's coming up for you, that has touched your heart. Just a word, just the word itself, the phrase itself. No need to elaborate yet. Waiting doesn't diminish you. The moment. Others? Yearning. Oh. Every detail in our lives of love for God has worked into something good. We get tired in the waiting.
Right alongside us helping.
Right alongside us helping. God knows. Thank you for sharing. The second step is reflection. So we each just ponder the word that has touched our heart, and we ask where the word or phrase touches our life today. And as we do this, I find myself getting really distracted when I try to do this, but that's part of the process. So let those things that seem like distractions actually bubble up and hold that. It's part of who we are, so let that kind of inform how we're listening, and ask God just to take that with all of who we are as we're listening to this. And really what we're doing at this point is asking that first question of, God, what are you saying to me? So that's what we ask as we hold and listen together. So continue to repeat your word while holding it in dialogue with God, listening for why this word grabs our attention today. I'm going to have Maya come up. So we'll be listening to the text while we also recite it. And Maya will read us through it so you can hear it in a different voice today too.
All around us, we observe a pregnant creation. The difficult times of pain throughout the world are simply birth pains. But it's not only around us, it's within us. The Spirit of God is arousing us within. We're also feeling the birth pains. These sterile and barren bodies of ours are yearning for full deliverance. That is why waiting does not diminish us, any more than waiting diminishes a pregnant mother. We are enlarged in the waiting. We, of course, don't see what is enlarging us. But the longer we wait, the larger we become, and the more joyful our expectancy. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside us, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. God does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. God knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our present pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good.
So friends, now we make some space to share what we're hearing. We've tried this a few different ways in the past. Today we're going to break into groups of 2, or if we need to, make 3, if we need to be sure to include everybody, and just take 1 minute each to name the phrase or word that is rising up for us, and just kind of our quick reflection on why that might be happening. And it's always okay to say, I didn't hear anything, or this is what I heard, and I don't know why it's coming up. There's the I don't know, or I'm not sure is always an appropriate response in this. I invite you to connect with folks that you don't know. Maybe it's the person that you talked to at the beginning, or at least try to find someone you didn't arrive with, because you can always talk with the person on the ride home, if you arrived with them. So find somebody that you did not arrive with. So let's move smoothly and decisively into groups of 2, 3 if necessary, and you can stand up and move around as needed as well. So let's just take a minute each to share. Okay, let's go. So thank you for just taking that moment. I know it's a certain amount of courageous work, both to listen for God, but then also to speak that out loud to someone. So thank you for doing that and for sharing your experience of what God's saying. I want to say a little bit about what I heard and what I hear for us as a community too. So this passage just seems, we partly chose it because it is so pertinent to this journey that we're on as a community. We announced last month, again, this trajectory of becoming a recognized congregation in the ELCA by July 1st, 2018. And so that means we're leaving the nest, launching from Holy Spirit Lutheran Church, our parent congregation, which means we have to do all this stuff. We have to write our governing documents and file with our IRS and become an official business, all this stuff. And so we're calling our journey #adulting, because we have to do all this adulting stuff. And we see these next months then not only as this journey of growing up into this next season as a church, but really looking for how this parallels our individual lives and how we are being invited to grow and become as well. And I hear in this passage Paul writing so beautifully in ways that boils down to, I hear him saying, man, adulting is so hard. Right? like all the yearning, all the aching, all the waiting that happens. That's what I hear in this. It is painful and groan-worthy to grow and wait for all that we are becoming, to wait for this hard season, that whatever we find ourselves in, man, this is really hard time. Like parenting right now is so hard, or as we wait for that person that we want to date, or to wait for the right job that suits us, or whatever like health stuff that we're facing, all of the waiting, or the counseling that we're being brave about and like treading through all that stuff to deal with the shadow side of ourselves. And it's hard work. The phrase that stuck out for me, as I said, was, we get tired in the waiting. We get tired in the waiting because it's hard. But I also then heard the word of grace that is part of that same sentence, which I heard Amanda say too. It's like the sentence actually, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along. And isn't that true? The moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along. So friends, for whatever we each are growing and groaning through right now in our lives, and whatever we're each hearing today, I invite you to pay attention to how God is inviting you to respond, but I also want to invite you into another response. I offer it because in 10 days, the season of Lent begins. It will be Ash Wednesday, also Valentine's Day, which is awesome. Nice little mashup there. I know. And spans, so Lent is those 6 weeks from Ash Wednesday to Easter Sunday. The word Lent means spring, and we consider it the season of spiritual and emotional spring cleaning for our lives. So we'll say more in the weeks to come about what that journey is going to look like for us here on Sunday mornings. I'm really excited for what's coming together for that, but there are ways that we can all get ready and participate actively in that journey even during the week. So I want to offer these to you as things to engage in for the season of Lent, so you can think about it over these next 10 days, and just a way to respond to whatever kind of adulting birth pangs that we're going through together. So these are all opportunities to grow by connecting with others in this community, because you better believe that 99% of the time, the way that God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along, that happens through the presence of others, the relationships that we have with others, right? So here are ways to help welcome in God's Spirit for the season of Lent. So 2 things. First is just doing the groundwork of listening for God through a daily devotional book. So we've chosen a book to read as a community. It's called Pauses for Lent, 1 short page per day. So if you're not a reader, even you can do this. But I've noticed, so within each page, there's just one word that you live with for the day. Then you can do the other things as well, a scripture passage, a devotional kind of to reflect on, and then even a kind of action that you can take. I've noticed for myself that some of the language that's used in that isn't necessarily the language that I would use. So you may find that some doesn't resonate with you, and that's okay. I find those moments to be just as I don't know, it helps me grow just as much to have words that I don't agree with, or like that I don't just flow through, because you can pay attention to that reaction. But that's only a few places. Otherwise, I think it's just going to be a great book for us to grow with and notice those nudges that God gives us as we live with that word each day, and notice what God does to connect with our lives and with those words throughout our day. So we have them for sale, $7 today. You can also order your own, but we have a bunch here. So please grab one. So that's the first thing. Just engage in a practice of reading and each day. Second, from those experiences of listening and that the books provide, I want to invite us to connect. So to intentionally then choose to enter into conversation about what we're experiencing in our journey through Lent with this book and otherwise with what God is saying. So here are 3 ways that you can connect. And you can pick one, or as you'll see, you can pick all 3 if you would like. So here are those opportunities. We're calling them our Salthouse Lent connection and growth opportunities. Number 1, based on our experience with the book, you can connect with a Facebook group. So a closed group, a place to just comment and engage with each other, hopefully daily or as often as you're able to. And that's, commenting on other people's comments. We do hope that it really is a place for connection, meaning that people just actively reflect and write and post and participate as they're able to, knowing that some days that's just not possible, but joining in the conversation when you can. So Jason's going to host that experience online for folks who want to engage that way during Lent. The second option is number 2, texting group. Dun, 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 dun. So if you would like to text with a small group of others about what you're hearing each day, hear what they are saying and hearing as well, then this is the thing for you. So I'm just talking about like one sentence, like doesn't have to be, and furthermore, I would like to, I mean, you can, but that's not the expectation. So just the like, man, this word really resonated for me, and then I went out to coffee and this person said, anyway, just like looking for the connections and sharing that. I don't know what the response will be, but I plan to keep the groups to no more than 6. So it won't be like 18 people texting you every day, but like 5 or 6 seems like the right number for that. Again, hoping for like the daily response, knowing that you don't get to it every day, and that's okay. And I'm going to host that experience for us. And finally, if you would like to actually talk with actual people, that is an option too. So we're going to have just on Sundays, live action group. That just means being present with each other. So after church, having a conversation at a local coffee shop. Again, coffee, prayer, reflection, conversation, laughter, tears, actually with people. Rachel Horton's going to host that experience. That's just like the best stuff, being with people. So know that that is an option as well for the 6 Sundays of Lent. So we have sign-ups here today, that whiteboard over there that we've had the last couple of weeks. Post-it notes, put your name down, slap it up there. We also have online sign-ups as well, so you can sign up later as well. But just think about how you might want to engage and commit to engagement and growth and connection through our journey together through Lent. Man, because adulting is hard. It is hard, people. So we look for ways then to walk into it with each other, knowing that it is God's Spirit that comes alongside us, helping us through with the presence of another person, right? All right, so let's finish our time in Lectio together. The 4th and final step of Lectio is to remain, to simply rest as the beloved of God in the presence of God, to hold what we've heard spoken through the Bible, through each other, as a word of grace and hope for us. So because we just sit in that space, because we believe that God is still speaking. So as we remain and finish this holy time together, let's continue to just hold sacred space for one another. So the band's going to come back up. I invite you to close your eyes again, to remember that you are, as my seminary professor said, sitting fat and sassy in the grace of God. Just to sit in that space of goodness, to connect with that breath. If you want to hold your palms on your lap, face up.